Okay. Hi, this is Leonard Davis with the Newport Beach Historical Society, and today we are interviewing two brothers, Gary and Bunker Hill of Hill's Boat Service, or what's the name of the company exactly?
Yeah, Hill's original corporation name was Boat Service Incorporated, and then we changed it to Hill's Boat Service because everyone was using our name. So that's kind of what they did, and so we're Boat Service Inc. DBA Hill's Boat Service.
And so what kind of service? I mean,
so we are basically we're a marine fuel dock that our fathers got us into, at a very young age, and he took it over for some guys in the early '50s, and here we are today, still running it.
And so your dad moved you guys down here in the '50s, then?
Well, we were born here. Okay. Yeah, we were born here in the '50s, and so we lived in Newport all of our lives, and Costa Mesa, as prices change, but that's where we are today, and we feel very fortunate. So.
And what was your dad's name?
Peter Hill.
Peter Hill. I know there were some other Hills living down here then.
We weren't related to him. There was a Hank Hill who used to own Boatswain's Locker, but there was no relationship. Yeah.
His mom was the mayor.
Right.
Okay. All right. So you came here in the 1950s, or you were born here, and then you grew up in the water here, probably.
Right.
And I know you went to Harbor High School because we graduated the same class of '71.
There you go.
And your brother said he graduated in '76. So.
Right.
And then, so tell me about your lives after high school.
So right after high school, since I was a little older than Bunker, I started working at the fuel dock early on, and then I was, I guess, the predecessor to take over the dock, and that's when Bunker got into captaining sport fishing boats in Cabo, and maybe I'll let him tell you a little bit about where he went from there. But there's three brothers, and we also have another brother, Sam, and we all to this day are still in the marine business.
So how old is he? Is he younger?
He is older than I am, so he would be 72 today.
Okay. So what year he graduated?
Whatever that was, 68?
68.
Yeah.
All right, and so one after the other. Okay. And so where's he today? Is he still?
He's in town. Yeah. He didn't. I don't know. I just didn't know how much how much he wanted or what. But yeah. So he's in town, and we also have a sister, which really had not much to do with the dock, other than she grew up with all of us here, and.
So you basically were sort of trained by your dad, and then took over after he. Is he still living or not?
No, he's not. Okay. But he kind of got, I guess the word maybe we'd both agree on was got burnt out at some point in time.
Yeah. This is back in those days there was, if you think about margins in a business and diesel fuel being 13 cents a gallon and boats, diesel engine powered boats in those days were much less frequent and didn't burn nearly as much fuel. They weren't turbocharged. They didn't go 40 knots. So the consumption of fuel in those days was less. The margins were less. The winters were long. And Newport in the 70s started to take a change. He kind of ran it almost somewhat single-handedly for years and years. I mean, the winters he always had help, but the winters were long and the times were a little tougher, and, he got burned out. Gary was right there at the right time. Timing was perfect.
And so yourself, you were captaining fishing boats, so tell me about that.
Well, after I got out of high school, I realized I wasn't necessarily destined for a 4-year university. I have never been one to sit still real well, and classrooms didn't suit me too well, and I learned better by doing things wrong twice and figuring it out the third time. So I left in 1977 to go to Cabo San Lucas as a deckhand for a guy who was a fabulous sailor but didn't know much about power boats or fishing, and so I went down kind of more as a deckhand and fishing guide. I'd spent a fair amount of time out front here in the local waters doing marlin fishing and that kind of thing, and then came home after about 6 months, and somebody thought I was good enough to hand the keys to a new boat, and I went right back down and kind of spent what would have been my college years down there working.
Okay.
At least in the summer or in the winters. We didn't. In the summers, they made you bring the boats home in those days.
Okay. And so meanwhile, Gary stayed up here and got more involved in this business. And so you've been doing this ever since then?
Pretty much, yeah. I did a stint. I was asked back in the day, I was asked to go run a fuel dock up in Oxnard, Channel Islands Harbor, for some guys that one of them was the big developer, Don Cole, who had a dock, and I ran that for maybe a year and a half, kind of absentee up there a couple days a week, up here, a couple days a week, and that's right when the fuel prices, maybe the fuel embargo, I'm trying to think, I don't know exactly the years, but
79.
yeah, 70, I think it was before that actually, but right. So anyway, we ended up getting out of that dock, and that's pretty much when I came here full time. And
So by
that's
the late 70s you were...
right, and that's kind of when my dad retired full time, and I jumped in, and pretty young and pretty dumb, and that's right where when the oil companies were getting all out of the business. I mean, it was crazy how they saw this environmental problems, and they, so we made a deal and bought all the equipment from Chevron. We always had the land leases, and so anyway, here we are today.
Okay, so from the 70s on, so you watched the harbor, develop well. Just it's changed a little bit, I guess. And what have you noticed that's really different today than say back then? Well,
I think it's what we all notice. It is if you look at the mooring field and you look at everything else, the lack of sailboats. How many sailing families have gone to power boats, and how the slips, like the marinas and everything, have gone from 30 to 40 foot slips to 60 and 70 foot slips.
Okay.
Bigger boats, more power boats, less sailboats.
Okay. Never really thought about that. Yeah. And you make more money on the power boats than sailboats, obviously.
Well, we do, but you got to remember, that's also when Orange County blew up. At the end of the 70s is when Fashion Island was built, Newport Center was built. When we were kids, everybody in the neighborhood's father drove to LA to work every day. Yeah. And then so many of those businesses moved down here. So, that's when Orange County exploded, and the housing market was on fire. When Bunker was working in Cabo, I was selling, boats to all these sport fishers, and these guys were making, a little bit like it's been the last couple of years, making a lot of money and spending a lot of money.
So you were selling boats too then?
No, we didn't do any selling. No, just all we do is we strictly are a marine fuel dock where we
selling fuel.
Selling fuel. I'm just saying we're selling fuel. And these guys were using a lot of boats and using their boats a lot. And again, the boats went from, old gas boats to diesel boats with, faster and faster.
And some of these boating people, a lot of them are probably your personal friends as well, I imagine.
Oh, very much so over the years, yeah. Yeah, and I've got to know a lot of them. I had great friendship through meeting a lot of these people.
So keeping in mind, we were fortunate enough to grow up on the water, along with running the business here. Our dad afforded us the opportunity to be on the water an enormous amount of time, whether it be in a 10-foot glass bar or a 16-foot whaler. And we spent a huge amount of time on the bay, back when you could water ski in the back bay and doodle around the bay and do all kinds of things that, you know, I could honestly say that probably my two brothers and myself, neither one of us could hit a baseball with a bat, but boy, we could back an outboard into any slip in the harbor. Because it's what we did. We spent, you know, I've described our life as it was like the TV show Flipper without the dolphin. We were constantly on the water. And so the passion grew, which kept us, which drove the desire to be on, you know, work on the water and stay on the water. And we still stay on the water and work on the water.
And so you're bringing your own kids into the business too.
I have, exactly.
What's his name, Connor? Or
My son's Carson.
Carson, okay.
Yeah.
So you're teaching him to step in to being third generation, I guess.
Right,
That's cool.
exactly.
Okay. Is there a fourth coming along?
Well, we don't know.
Not yet.
We'll see. I do have grandchildren,
Oh, you do? Okay.
so we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah, get him a job down here during the summer.
that's right. As soon as they get old enough, we'll see how that dog works.
All right. So they're not, how old are they?
Oh, they're young. I have 4 under 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how about you?
Well, I have a son that works for me. So yeah, I have one, you know, that's intention is to take a little heat off the old man for a while, and as of now, my goal is this time of the year to try to work 3 to 4 days a week instead of 5 or 6 days a week.
Still skippering boats?
No, I'm actually working as a marine surveyor,
Okay.
which is kind of the equivalent, if you will, of being a home inspector and a home appraiser,
Okay.
all in one, which it's a required service. If you were to purchase a used vessel and expect to get financing or insurance, you have to have an independent survey report. Qualified yachtsmen that have bought and sold many boats realize the value in that process of having someone that's, the more qualified you are in that position, the more they want your input as they you know, get ready to lay down lots of money to purchase any particular boat.
And so your son is involved with that?
He's involved with that as well. Yeah, and we do that locally as well as up and down the coast and somewhat internationally.
Let's see. Any involvement, Gary, with yacht clubs around here?
We have been. I am a member of Newport Harbor Yacht Club. I was not. I was a crewman. Young. I was with my family. My parents were not a member of a yacht club, but I did a lot of sailing in snowbirds and Lido 14s as a young kid. And then when I became 18, I became a skipper member of Newport Harbor Yacht Club, which was a very wonderful membership category. And so I've been very involved in that club with the outpost station over in Moonstone and with different boats that I've been involved with. And I was fairly involved in building the new clubhouse. And,
That's beautiful. Yeah. Are there any snowbirds around the harbor anymore?
there is one. There is one, yeah. So I did see one the other day. And I don't know if you remember the kites boat.
Yeah.
I just restored a kite, which is pretty fun. Yeah.
We had one of those.
Yeah, a lot of people did. So that's a lot of fun.
I remember one time I was with my brother-in-law. It was in March, and the boat flipped over and turned turtle. And the harbor patrol had, you're supposed to be able to just flip it back up, but we couldn't get it out, and the whole top of the sail was all covered with
Oh yeah, it was stuck in the mud. Yeah,
stuff.
That was
Water was cold.
that was a pretty common problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen too many of those around, but a few.
No, there's a few. Brad Avery has one, and I have one, and I think if you remember the Valdez family, they owned Columbia Yachts forever. Vince Valdez has one. There's probably half a dozen of them in the harbor now still.
So what's your favorite kind of powerboat? Favorite?
Well, I own a fairly nice powerboat to this day. As you might recall, I owned that big tugboat forever, the William B. We had that as a family boat for 28 years. And it was quite something. And then we lost that boat in a fire in 2015, and we purchased a new boat up in the Pacific Northwest in 2016, which Bunker and his son came up to Seattle and surveyed for me, which was wonderful.
What kind of boat was that?
It's a custom-built boat in Tacoma called a Jones Goodell,
Okay. And how long is it?
72 feet.
And where do you keep it?
Keep it on a mooring off of Newport Harbor Yacht Club.
What's the name of it?
Peter B.
Peter. Okay. Well, tell me more about your you travel a lot, I guess. So and you've been around the world, or
Well, we have
or just
my job has taken me as far away as Spain and Taiwan, more regularly to within the continental United States to the East Coast, primarily South Florida, into the Carolinas, few odd places like New Mexico, many trips to the Pacific Northwest, in the greater Seattle area, down into the Texas Gulf Coast, Orange Beach, Alabama, and then down into probably make 4 or 5 trips a year to the Cabo San Lucas area for work, and more recently been doing some work in various parts of Costa Rica. Been to many other countries or places, Panama, where did I just get back from? Curacao. So there's, wherever there's a boat that they're willing to pay me to go look at, I'll generally go look at it. Talking about a Fiji trip right now. So we'll see how some of this plays out.
And you went north, to Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I've been in Nova Scotia and lots of times to Canada.
okay. So where do you like to sail, or do you do any sailing at all, or is this all powerboat?
Are you talking to me now or Bunker?
Either.
I have sailed. We both have sailed a lot our lives. I have done a couple of Transpac races. I've done a few Cabo races.
Not like Mike Waller, who goes all over the world. But
I haven't figured out how to take that kind of time off yet, but yeah. But no, I think Mike Lawler just took off again, I heard. But no, Bunker and I have sailed. We've done a lot of opening day races. We've done a lot of Catalina races, but we actually both own power boats today, and but do not have a sailboat other than I mentioned my kite. Yeah.
I guess, what do you like best about, it's obviously you like the yachting life, but in Newport Beach, and why here as opposed to, of course, you've grown up here.
Well, I think this is,
Consider going anywhere else to live?
this is where we were born. This is where my business is. I'm not going to speak for Bunker, but I think that, he might be able to move he could probably move his business to San Diego but I was very fortunate to buy a home here in 1978, and thank God, because I could know if I left here, I could never afford to come back. And so this is where my business is. I've been fortunate enough for 30 years to ride my bike to work every day, because I live right up next to Newport Harbor High School, and so I'm right here, and I have a boat here, and I have boats on the water, and fortunately, my wife and my kids have all enjoyed boating, so that's been a great passion for our family. So.
And okay, back to the business here. So this business, how long? So this business, you said, was started back in the 50s, I guess?
Well, let me rephrase it. This has been a fuel dock for a long, long time. We only know the history of 1947, and that's when it turned into a marina, which means it had a floating dock. So before, and I don't know if you remember, but the Rhine Channel, I think when we were little kids, there were 7 fuel docks, 7 places to get fuel in this harbor. And back in the Rhine Channel, where all the commercial boats were, they would just sell fuel off the pier, which this here is the pier we're sitting on, okay? So we're on a pier. the dock is down below.
Yeah.
So the dock was added in 1947. And that's when they had a big opening, and, it was a Boat Service Inc. marina, and that's when all that went on. But I believe they sold fuel off this pier before 1947. And then some guys that opened that realized they didn't really know much what they were doing. So they called my father, who I don't know that he knew any more than they did, but he had been around boats as a child. So they brought him in, and I believe maybe 1950. And I don't know, I don't have records of when he owned the dock outright, but somewhere between 1950 and 1955, I think he took, control of the dock.
Good time to acquire real estate. My parents did that too. So I guess across the harbor over there is one of your competitors that's still left, the Beeks.
The Beek family, right. So that's been a dock since, gosh, I don't know how long, way before I was born. But the Beek family had always owned the property. And then it went through a couple of hands, and it was owned by a great guy named Bob Bisbee, who was a big sport fishing guy and puts on the Bisbee tournaments in Cabo. And he had it. And then when his lease ran out, the Beek family thought that they could run it themselves and do a pretty good job, and they've done a great job. So they have Seymour's son, David Beek, running the dock now. And it's a great competitor. So
I remember going to high school with some of them too. So.
Yeah.
So you have a friendly rivalry.
Yeah. And then you and I went to high school with Carol Beek.
Yeah.
She was in our class. Yeah. So, but then again, where the guy that started the frozen banana guy, Teller, who went on to start the Orange County Swap Meet, where the property he bought was a fuel dock as well, and then down here where Newport Landing is was Arts Landing, and that was a fuel dock. So there was 4 solid fuel docks in the 70s, but then I don't know if you remember, but there was a fuel dock back at the dunes at the launch ramp. There was a fuel dock at the Arches at the other end of the bay across from the A restaurant. And then there was both sport fishing landings where Blue Water Grill is and where the old Reuben E. Lee was. Those guys had facilities to fuel their own boats. So
isn't there one over there somewhere too?
No.
No. So you're the only two then.
Yeah, we're the only 2 today. And again, there was I think I counted one time there were 7, because when we were little kids there was still a mobile fuel dock, basically where Balboa Boatyard, Woody's Wharf areas in the Rhine Channel.
So more boats, more power boats, fewer fuel docks, so you guys are doing okay then.
So we're but again, all environmentally, I had to, 1994, I had to pull all the fuel tanks out, put in all new tanks, everything double wall, everything, all pressure testing, all, our environmental protection, dealing with the AQMD, dealing with all the municipalities is why an awful lot of people went independent and the big oil companies got out. So, but that's pretty much where we.
Reaching back to the friendly rivalries, as a young boy, we could get here to see Dad 2 ways: ride our bike, which was generally riding across Balboa Island, getting on the ferry, coming over here, or taking one of the boats. Which, if you were the first one in the boat, you got it. If you were the second one, you rode your bike, or possibly an older brother said, "I'll be taking the boat today." But I can remember getting to the ferry on multiple occasions when that was Beek's place was a Shell station, and a good old guy named Jack Nelson ran it. And realizing I didn't have a nickel to get across the ferry, and going to see if I could borrow a nickel from Jack. And he says, "No, but you can earn one." So he'd make me help him tie up 2 or 3 or 4 boats on his dock, and then I could get the nickel from him to get across the ferry to come over here. And we've known a lot of these guys. It's you talked about moving, the thought of moving, and I could move my business. I don't want to move my business. For me, I'm very centrally located because I have, I'm 45 minutes to an hour to Marina Del Rey. I'm an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes to San Diego. So if I went either direction, north or south, I would be creating an imbalance on part of my business that way. I was once in a hardware store with a friend of mine that was from out of town, and we had to stop at a few places, and I told him, when we were on the way home, he said, "You know everybody in town." And I said, "I don't know, we ran into a few people I know." And what I realized after that conversation was that we are deeply rooted into this area, and I can't imagine not having the resources that we have and knowing the people we know, and being able to help others and have others help us at times, and knowing who the right person was to help us, and those kinds of things that we have. And sometimes it's been taken for granted way too many days, way too long. But when you're that ingrained, and you've always been that ingrained, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. But when you step back and realize how fortunate we are, I can't imagine really being anywhere else.
Well, I think that about sums
I
up.
mean, you and I were at our 50th high school reunion a year ago. I just went to my wife's at the pavilion Saturday night, and it was amazing how many people because Bunker, I don't know if we've really mentioned, but we grew up in Bay Shores, and when I was young, I ended up going to Harbor View School. That's just where people in Bay Shores went. So I grew up with a whole bunch of people that ended up going to Corona, so it was really fun. Being at my wife's reunion, knowing I knew almost as many people or more than she did. So she went to Corona, yeah. So
Okay, well, I think that about sums it up for today. It's been really enjoying talking to you and just listening to your stories. And once again, we have Gary and Bunker Hill, who family of longtime operators of this facility. And anyway, thank you very much.
very welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.